Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku now says that all armed criminals will be handled according to the law. In the face of recent attacks, Olelenku added that religion has little to do with terrorism and that whoever is involved in terrorism activities will be dealt with as a criminal. The Cabinet Secretary was meeting his counterparts from East Africa, said the 5 East African countries would work together to ensure the security of their citizens. Olelenku further sought to clarify the matter of the shooting to kill order issued in Mombasa earlier in the week.
County Commissioner wa Mombasa alikuwa anamaanisha kusema kwamba kuna mahali ikiwepo kwamba maisha ya officers, maisha ya raia iko kwa hatari. Vile sheria imesema kuna hatari ikikuwa kwa maisha wao wenyewe, wanaruhusiwa kutumia silaha kujilinda na kulinda sheria. Lakini mambo ya shoot to kill order hiyo hakuna. Hata leo asubuhi Kimayo aliwaeleza kwamba hiyo officer hakumaanisha tu kwamba polisi wako tayari tu kutumia risasi kiholela holela. Sheria imesema mahali na wakati askari anaruhusiwa kutumia bunduki.
Mwingi North Member of Parliament Rahim Dawood has been accused of constructing on a wetland against the law. The Meru County Executive for Planning, Dr. Paul Mugambi, said the MP bought the land from someone who acquired it illegally from the former Meru County Council and wants the land surrendered back to the public. But in a quick rejoinder, Rahim vowed to continue with the construction, saying only the court could stop him. The MP said he has 4 title deeds out of the 15 that were issued for the land. Rahim maintained he bought the land through due process from the owners. The county executive for planning said some powerful people have been trying to acquire the land unlawfully. Residents say the land near the Kenya Methodist University where construction works are ongoing is a source of several springs in Kaga village. Though the Meru County government has stopped any further development on the controversial land, Mwingi North MP Rahim Dawood said the 500 million shilling project is unstoppable.
Kuna wakati samani hapa kulikuwa morim na watu walikuwa competited. Wale walikuwa hapa walikuwa competited na ikawa ni mahali pa county council. Kwa hiyo ikabakia ikiwa mahali pa serikali. Hata tukiwa hapa sisi tunashangaa sana tukiona private developer ambaye ni Rahimu akiwa anajenga hapa.
I called Rahim himself, Honorable Rahim. I explained to him that this land is public and the history of it is public. Whether he owns a title deed or not, as far as we are concerned, that one is fake. And if not fake, then it must have been issued irregularly.
The governors from Machakos, Kitui and Makueni have formed a summit to spearhead growth and development in the larger Ukambani region. The governors held the first development forum in Kitui, vowing to work as a bloc and in harmony. The leaders resolved to work together to speed up development in their respective regions, but at the same time develop the Ukambani region as a whole. They equally agreed on modalities of sharing and exploiting natural resources deposited along county borders to benefit their residents. They pledged to support the development of Konza City in Makueni County, stretching to the border of Machakos County, with antagonism between the Kitui governor and his members of county assembly. The governors collectively and in their personal capacity apologized for antagonizing any leaders, saying they are committed to fostering unity and development.
Ndogo, fedha nyingi inapotea kwa ufisadi ambao umenawiri Kenya. Kwanza tungekuwa na gold medal ya ufisadi tungepewa sisi hapa Kenya. Kwa hivyo nimefurahi sana kuwa hapa na kusema kwamba kikao hiki cha Ukamba Leaders Development and Devolution Forum ni jambo la muhimu na jambo ambalo lazima tushikane pamoja na tufanye kazi pamoja. Tigo?
Ni kama mwalimu wa katiba na mwalimu wa mageuzi, mimi nimeona kabisa kwamba kupigania devolution ndio iingie sawa sawa kutakuwa ni kugumu zaidi ya jinsi tulipigania katiba.
Now, let's go to the courts, and it is a temporary reprieve for Nairobi landowners as Justice George Odunga issued orders stopping new land rates. The High Court has also declared that the Visa Oshol Primary School is public property. Winnie Kamau has the details.
Very High Court.
Reprieve for Nairobi landowners as Justice George Odunga issued orders stopping new land rates. This was after Nairobi Senator Gideon Sonko moved to court and a certificate of urgency saying the county government was set to double the rates from 17% to 34% for all the unimproved properties within Nairobi. The senator, through his lawyer Lydia Kwamboka, told the court unless the restraining orders are reissued, the Nairobi County agent would start effecting the notification and that the property owners within the Nairobi County may be prosecuted for failure to pay the rates. Sonko says the county government came up with the rates without consultation with the stakeholders or residents of Nairobi. He insisted the move was arbitrary and oppressive. Justice Odunga directed the Nairobi residents to continue paying the old rates of 17%, pending the hearing of the case 30th April this year. In another case, the High Court has ordered the release of 117 taxis which were impounded by the police during the Matatu strike in Nairobi. Justice Isaac Lenaola directed the vehicles be released to the owners upon production of logbooks and identification. He further ordered that the owners of the vehicles be paid 9,000 shillings per taxi seized, saying that the detention of the taxis was unlawful and made the taxi owners suffer. Justice Lenaola also directed the registrar of the motor vehicles to release the number plates that were removed from the taxis. The taxi operators were protesting the incremental parking fees by the Nairobi government on 5th March this year when the cars were impounded. Elsewhere, a Nairobi courtroom was treated to drama after the file in the case involving the son of former Internal Security Minister Professor George Saitoti went missing. The executive officer in charge of the High Court Registry was at pains to explain the disappearance of the original file in the case in which a couple is claiming the man who is living as the son of the Saitoti's widow. The file was supposed to be produced in court for the judge to give directions as to the hearing of the petition filed by Zachary Musengi Saitoti against the Director of Public Prosecution. An agitated Lenaola adjourned the hearing for 5 minutes and personally visited the registry to establish why the file had not been availed in court. Justice Lenaola directed that a skeleton file be constructed. The case will be heard next week. Finally, from the courts, Visa Oshol Primary School was declared a public school, throwing out the contention that it was privately owned. Justice Isaac Lenaola dismissed the case filed by the management of Visa Oshol community seeking to have the school declared a private institution. It was also noted that the school has been a public institution, receiving monetary support from the government, including teachers employed by the Teacher Service Commission and managed by a Parent-Teachers Association. Winnie Kamau, KTN, Nairobi.
Well, KTN was yesterday announced the winner in the just concluded Disability Inclusion Awards 2014 in the information category. KTN won the award for running features of people with disability and for being the only television station that now consistently provides sign language interpretation in the news bulletins. This was recognized as a major boost for those with hearing impairment who can now follow and understand news through sign language interpreters. Now, Isiolo residents received a special unexpected treat when a trailer transporting sodas from Nairobi overturned on reaching the soda depot in Isiolo town. Eyewitnesses termed the accident as bizarre. The trailer was not in motion at the time. An eyewitness recalled that the lorry had just arrived at the depot and was waiting to be offloaded when he heard a loud bang. A section of residents are now nursing injuries sustained as they scrambled for the drinks before police arrived at the scene. The driver of the truck suffered a fracture on his left hand. Moving on. on, in Nyeri, elderly persons were treated to a free medical camp where over 300 of them came for the free checkups. Health officials are concerned that most aged people do not go for checkups and therefore diseases that afflict the elderly are not detected early. Here's Carol Nderi with that story.
It was a day like no other for the aged persons in Nyeri. Whoever said old age is a hindrance to one enjoying a jig should perhaps ask these senior citizens who turned up at the Dead and Kimathi Kamkunji grounds in Nyeri for a free medical camp. It was a welcome break for the over 300 elderly persons who received free medical checkups, as at their age they are prone to certain diseases. Their beaming faces showing just how much of a good time they were having, evident that some in their heydays were quite the agile dancers. Besides the free medical care, they also received shoes, as many aged persons in their rural areas often go without. Much needed walking sticks were also handed out to them, courtesy of the Purity Elderly Care Foundation that organized the camp.
We are asking people to come out and help us help more people. There is so much need out there. There is so much neglect. There is so much abandonment. Ask people to look after their own parents. However old they are, even if you're in Nairobi, employ a nurse. There are nurses that are available for home care. But more so, it would be good if they can come and live with you. For one, I live with my father-in-law.
There has been a concern over the neglect of aged people. Wanjiko says many young people forget that their parents and grandparents back in the villages need physical, emotional, and financial support. She was quick to remind Kenyans that youth is temporary and one cannot evade old age.
Mimi mfana iko piato iko naye. Mimi mfana kula mi bado maziwa nimekunywa na madadi nimekula.
The illness, these guys cannot even afford to go to hospital. They cannot even afford to pay the bills. The 2,000 cash transfer that the government is actually offering the elderly, which we appreciate, it's actually not enough to actually cater for their meals.
The medical officers at the camp said many do not go for checkups and only go to hospital when the ailments are quite advanced. Early detection and subsequent treatment for the aged persons would ensure that they live a quality life.
We would wish that all of them attend to these services in our hospitals, so that if they have hypertension or high blood pressure, it will be detected early.
Carol Nderi for KTN in Nyeri.
It's now close to 20 years since the Rwanda genocide and reconciliation villages are now building the hope of the nation. Victims and perpetrators of the genocide now live side by side in these villages. Here's the rest of the story.
20 years ago, Rwanda was torn apart as violence spread across the country with staggering speed and brutality. Ordinary Rwandans became killers and neighbors enemies. More than 800,000 people were killed in 100 days. Yet today, a handful of those victims and perpetrators live side by side in a small community known as the Reconciliation Village. The village is funded by the non-profit Christian organization Prison Fellowship International, providing homes in exchange for the reconciliation between two former enemies, both Hutu and Tutsi.
We helped each other bring water and mud to build new homes for ourselves. We didn't say this one is Hutu or this one is Tutsi.
During the genocide, members of Cecile's family were brutally killed with machetes, and she only managed to survive by fleeing into neighboring Burundi. Now, Cecile lives next door to one of the men responsible for the slaughter. Tried by Rwanda's traditional Gacaca courts, Frederick Kazigwemo had his sentence cut short after he confessed to killing 9 people, including members of Cecile's family.
Before I apologized, I didn't have peace in my heart. Sometimes when I was standing somewhere, I would see the faces of those I killed in my eyes. Now I don't see them anymore.
Since 1994, the Rwandan government has worked to build a common national identity.
They share the same culture, they share the same language, they share the same believing in God. So what Hutu, Tutsi and Twa have in common is much, much more than what can devise artificially them.
These children may share a yard and a future. But the Reconciliation Village is still an exception in Rwanda, where many remain haunted by the memory of the genocide.
Ouarzazate in southern Morocco was once dubbed the Mecca of the film industry for its studio facilities and the stark beauty of its locations, with many Hollywood blockbusters shot there. Now, after years of near-dormant state, the country's movie industry is slowly getting back in the spotlight. Here's more on that story.
It's all quiet on set. Actors, makeup artists, and stagehands are preparing for the next scene. Atlas Studio in the southern Moroccan city of Ouarzazate may look all too familiar. It's in these stunning desert landscapes that a raft of movie blockbusters such as Lawrence of Arabia, Gladiator, and Babel were filmed. But in recent years, fewer and fewer production companies have come calling, leaving film crews and extras with little to do.
From 1986 until 2009, cinema production was very present here in Ouarzazate. But from 2009 until 2012, there has been very little work for us.
The global economic crisis put many projects on hold, and the turmoil of the Arab Spring across the region pushed international filmmakers to look elsewhere. Many of the sets remain, visited by tourists and maintained by locals as a sort of museum of movie making.
We took responsibility for the sets on this plateau about 16 to 18 years ago. We have 2 site keepers a day and 1 for the evening, and we are able to pay their salaries when a new film production arrives to use this place.
Many film backdrops are real-life places. Historical sites are homes that are unique to the area. Production companies negotiate with local leaders to shoot there, bringing in much-needed income for villagers.
A big production company came here to film. They partially restored the places that they were interested in, paying the village 500 or 600 euros.
The cash flow has been cut back to just a trickle, but locals are still hopeful that Ouarzazate can attract big-budget movies once again. Several major productions have visited since the beginning of the year. There are already 4 films in production here, and a starring role for this city would mean jobs for hundreds of people.
Antarctica is home to a few hardy souls who endure -40 degrees Celsius winters while trying to lead a normal life as possible. In Las Estrellas town, the snow and glacial wind doesn't keep its 64 inhabitants from having a bank, a school, and occasional visitors. Take a look at this.
Antarctica, a hostile, untamed land where winter temperatures often drop to -40 degrees centigrade. But against these odds, the settlement of Las Estrellas has in its own way thrived since 1984. 64 people live here, many families of workers in the nearby Chilean military base. Among them are 6 children. Their school curriculum is the same as back in Chile, but the first thing they learn is how to cope with the cold.
Here, we can't wear regular clothes. When we go to the beach or to school, even if it's only a few meters away, we have to change clothes. As soon as we go outside, we have to cover ourselves from head to toe.
Under international law, Antarctica is reserved for scientific research, and as such, it is sovereign to no nation. Alongside the scientists and soldiers, there are a handful of civilians, such as the manager of this bank, the only one on the continent.
I have a very close group of friends. We're all very happy here. We organize many events. We share our daily routine with the other bases, with the Russians, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Argentines, and the Uruguayans.
Despite its isolation, Las Estrellas, one of only 2 permanent settlements in Antarctica, receives about 30,000 visitors per year.
I come here for 6 months during the summer to support the logistics of the base, because there's a big influx of tourists and scientists.
The families here usually stay between 6 months and 2 years, And when the time comes to move back to Chile, many say they have a hard time leaving the white continent behind.
Well, thank you very much for watching KTN Weekend at 1. Have a great afternoon. My name is Najmi Ismail.